the last one of 2024. Sure. Okay. This is an episode that's infamous for being, well, it's labeled part one and part two. It's more like two different episodes where one of them is a sequel to the other in a way that just doesn't normally work in serial television. So they decided to label it part one and part two to keep people from, forgetting that the two episodes are directly connected. Which, you know, my logic for this I'll explain later, but the logic is mostly that the nature of the story drastically changes at the end point of part one, which is why I'm going to do part two in a separate video. I wouldn't have to talk about things in part two, but part one is mostly just set up so that part two can happen. It's really, really long setup though. But it sets the stage for what they're going to do in part two. And looking at this from a TTRPG standpoint, it's a bunch of world building. Like, this is basically just, doing an hour-long world building session so that you can set this stage for what you're going to do in the next part. And, writing a campaign and TTRPG is kind of like that, where you have your big bad. You have to introduce the big bad before you fight the big bad, and then do stuff in the middle along the way. You don't just, throw a big bad out there and then have the party fight them. That's not how big bads work. And Cardassians, as a long-term strategic threat, also have similar logic. You have to introduce them. You have to explain why you're introducing them and talk about what they're doing and so on and so forth. And then eventually you get around to fighting them. Otherwise, it's just, a one-off incidental encounter, not a long-term strategic endeavor. At any rate, this is one of those things where there's a drastic difference between the story as it really is and the story as it's presented to the viewer. And again, due to the nature of the way the plot is being set up, this means that there's a drastic difference between what the person who wrote the plot knows and what the viewer knows. Because several things are subterfuge and diversions. And to the viewer, that's not immediately obvious. But the person who's writing it needs to know where all of this stuff is going so that when it gets there, it feels like it makes sense instead of just being random nonsense. And yeah, time to get into that. So we start by having Picard talk about the Cardassian border and meeting with Admiral Nechayev, who is someone we see more than once. And the Cairo, I don't remember how often that one gets seen, but several of the NPC ships, or sorry, non-main character ships in Next Generation did come up in multiple episodes. So Cairo might have been one of them. Nechayev did pop up in more than one episode, played by the same actress each time, although she didn't look exactly the same. I don't know, apparently she had Bulgarian ancestors or something other. Nechayev actually sounds like a Eastern European name anyways. Oh, the Dominion had a simulation of her. That would explain why it's slightly different than that one time. What's it? Alina. Alina also feels like an Eastern European name, yeah. Anyway, though, she pops up in multiple episodes. This is actually one of her relatively early appearances. Several of the other ones come up later, and she also does pop up in DS9. not necessarily only as a hologram either. Yeah. To be honest, having admiral characters in a Star Trek setting when the crew is, on their ship doing stuff makes sense. You have a chain of command. Your captain has an admiral that they report to. Now, the Star Trek writers did not go to the time and effort to actually establish how the admiral's chain of command works. Real world logic, each ship captain would have a specific admiral that they report to. Whether or not your TTRPG campaign that you're running needs that is all entirely up to you when you're writing it. And that's something that you, as the person writing the story, needs to decide. You could do like they do in Lower Decks, where you have the captain constantly talking to one specific admiral, who is a relatively minor character in terms of screen time, but is a continually recurring character. Or you could just do the vague, I talked to Starfleet Command to see what Starfleet Command had to say about it. Because in TOS, most of Kirk talking to Starfleet Command happened off screen. He would talk to one of the bridge officers about it, be like, yeah, I gotta call Starfleet Command about that. And then later on, he'd talk to a different bridge officer, or maybe the same one, uh, after he'd talked to Starfleet Command, be like, okay, here's what Starfleet Command said. They would just not show the conversation. Wouldn't give you any clear indication of who he's even talking to, just that it's someone at Starfleet Command, which as a storytelling device works because if the story doesn't care who he's talking to, you don't actually need to put it in. But if you're going to have named characters as admirals, then, because here's the thing, TOS didn't have the evil admirals trope. TNG came up with that one. And realistically, most of the evil admirals in TNG weren't actually all that evil in either. But they would be more like non-villainous antagonists where someone in the Admiralty wanted the crew to do something that the crew didn't want to do. Not necessarily something that was a bad thing in the big picture. More that it's something that the crew didn't want to do. Although, anyways, I don't remember if... Anyway, that aside, Nechayev is the person who talks to Picard about having Jellicoe take over as captain of the Enterprise. Why? Well, here's the thing. Picard knows why. I think only 2 other members of the Enterprise's crew actually know. Everyone else just thinks that it's just a regular change of command, and Jellicoe is being given command of the Enterprise, and that it's Jellicoe's ship now, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Again, this is one of those things where I was saying, it's like, you as the storyteller need to know what the story actually is, but you also need to keep in mind what is being presented publicly and what is being hidden. Like, what's being hidden is the reason why Picard is being reassigned. And also why Dr. Crusher and Worf are also being reassigned. Now, that is something that will come out in great detail later. The first episode of this, we do find out that it's not a real change of command. It's kind of a fake change of command. But the people doing this don't actually know how things will turn out. So they're putting Jellicoe in place as if it's a real change of command, even though they don't actually really plan to leave Jellicoe in place. Oh yeah, by the way, whose ship was the Cairo? Okay, this does get destroyed, but it doesn't get destroyed yet. Yeah, yeah, the Cairo got destroyed in the Dominion War. Lots of ships got destroyed in the Dominion War, quite frankly, and most of them, wait, huh? How does it get into the Delta Quad? I don't know, maybe the wreckage guy got pulled into the Delta Quadrant by the caretaker array or something stupid like that. I have no idea. Oh, wait, that's right. Uh, Prodigy used the idea that Cairo was believed to have been destroyed by the Dominion because it went missing during the Dominion War, and people didn't actually know who had destroyed it. It's just gone, and they don't know why. That's actually a good thing with plot hooks that you can do it when you're writing your own story. Is because you take a thing in the show that was left ambiguous and then make it not ambiguous. Like, the nature of it in the actual facts is something that you need to take into consideration, and don't just make up something that doesn't make sense. You have to make up something that at least plausible, shall we say. Anyway, though, so yeah, that's what happened with the Cairo. Didn't get seen in a lot of episodes, but here's the thing. In this episode, the Enterprise meets with the Cairo so that Jellicoe, who is currently the captain of the Cairo, basically just switches ships with Picard. Huh? Yeah. The Cairo shows up later in the episode, um, or shows up in Chain of Command Part 2, I should say, um, as helping protect things from the Cardassians. But, it doesn't really get significantly damaged in that or anything. And then, when everything is resolved, Jellicoe goes back to being the captain of the Cairo. This wiki article doesn't say who took over as captain of the Cairo while Jellicoe was gone. If I was to guess, I would go with, oh wait, here. Wait, no, Leslie Wong is 2374. That's a different year. That would have to be in the pale moonlight. Uh-huh. Yeah, we didn't even see her. Okay, whatever. So yeah, I would guess that Jellicoe's first officer on the Cairo took over as captain while he was gone, but the episode doesn't tell us because that's not important. Anyway, so moving on. We established that Nechayev has the idea of having Picard do a special assignment, and Jellicoe is taking over as captain of the Enterprise while Picard is on special assignment. Why are they doing this? Why? Because Picard's going to be doing spy stuff, and the Federation is making an effort to make it look like Picard is not doing spy stuff and is doing regular Starfleet stuff instead, and is trying to hide the fact that he's doing spy stuff by transferring him off the Enterprise while he does the spy stuff so that he won't be obviously missing from his normal place of duty, because his normal place of duty is no longer the Enterprise. Does that actually work? Hell no. The Cardassians, who... Okay, here's one of those things that you, as the person running this story, in a TTRPG would need to keep in mind while you run the story while not telling it to the players. The whole thing is a trap. See, for some reason, the Cardassians have decided that they want to lure Picard into leaving the Enterprise so that they can torture him for information. That's actually the entire point of the whole thing. Like, the whole thing with Picard being held captive by the Cardassians was actually the whole plan here that the Cardassians had, which actually worked, much to, Picard's dismay, I'm sure. So, the Federation, as they're trying to do their subterfuge stuff, they don't just like have Picard like go on leave or something like, oh, I'm going to go skiing on Andoria for 3 weeks. Nope, nope, nope. They don't do anything like that. They instead do the whole change of command thing and pretend that he's just, gone. And of course, the Cardassians are like, "Oh, hey, they did a change of command at the Enterprise. Yeah, that tracks. Cool. I see the plot is moving along perfectly normally." Anyways, so the secret. The other thing about this that's interesting is that for some reason, Jellicoe, when he's acting as captain of the Enterprise, does several things that make it obvious that he's not Picard. And they don't explain in this episode why Jellicoe is doing that. I didn't actually look it up, but part of my brain wants me to say that Jellicoe is really just putting on a show. And to a certain extent, it's his way of getting to know people, because as a commanding officer, he wants to test people so that it's not just ask them what they're capable of, test them to see what they're capable of. And it's, shall we say, socially awkward. Anyway, though, like this whole thing is like, he wants Riker to do battle drills, which realistically, the battle drills are something that they actually had a specific reason to do. And he does a whole bunch of stuff like oh, well, we're going to need to do this, this, and this. And you find out later that some of this is really just him making practical suggestions that he thinks would actually be useful when you're, in a firefight against Cardassians, because while the Cardassians are theoretically technologically inferior to the Federation, Cardassian ships have enough firepower that you need to carefully consider your options before engaging them in battle. It's not a given where you can just like walk in, shoot things, and leave fighting them. And, Jellicoe has good reason to believe that they might end up in a firefight with a Cardassian Gaylord. Yeah, this Cardassian Gaylord. The Roctor. Anyway, Roctor, Vector, or something. Anyway, yeah, they end up having a rather tense diplomatic discussion with several Cardassians from that ship, and the Cardassians act like they know what's going on, and it's kind of one of those things of like, wait, oh. It's just one of those things where you could put into the episode as a hint that the Cardassians know that someone is trying to sneak into their secret facility. I say secret with air quotes here that you can't see, because the facility was created as a trap, and thus the trap doesn't work unless the Federation knows about the existence of said secret facility, so that the Cardassians can lure someone to the secret facility that they're supposedly trying to keep the Federation from finding out about. I mean, let's face it. When you build a facility like this, it does look like you're trying to keep people out of it. It really does look like you're trying to keep people out of it. Thing is, though, this door is about as far as Worf and Crusher get. They go inside like, oh, hey, this isn't what we thought it was. Oh no, it's a trap. And then Worf and Crusher get locked out of the facility, and they realize that the Cardassian guards are outnumbering them to the point where they have no hope of rescuing Picard, and that their only chance is to get help and find more people to help them rescue Picard. Dun dun dun. But again, from a game master perspective, you need to know ahead of time that it's a trap. Now, this is an episode that gets into some really, really weird uh, sci-fi technobabble explanations for why it's a trap and why they're luring Picard specifically into a trap. And that's something that gets interesting, because like the whole thing with Diamond Solak. Solak has good reason to believe that Picard and Worf are, as he put it, Federation spies. He doesn't really care. He just wants them to, adequately compensate him for his time and effort. I don't remember. Actually, let's take a quick look at the Solak page. I didn't look that one up earlier. Oh, right. They chose him because he's a Ferengi that is a material supplier to the Cardassians on Keltris. And they want to go to the planet Keltris, and he's like the only guy outside Cardassian space that regularly goes to Keltris. So they pay him to bring him along to Keltris without telling the Cardassians about it. Does he actually tell the Cardassians? We don't ever find that out. The Cardassians are obviously expecting Picard to show up, though, so it's likely that they had some way of detecting him. Whether or not Solak had anything to do with that is completely unstated. They don't tell us in the episode whether or not Solak was being honest when he said that he wasn't going to tell the Cardassians. Of course, given the way things are going in this, it's possible that the Cardassians detected them on the ship somehow and just didn't bother doing anything about it because they were waiting for the mice to get into the trap before springing the trap. Like, oh, hey, we found the mice. Okay, great. We'll let them walk down the hallway. Good, good, good. Now slam the door on them. Obviously, they need to have them beam down to the planet and try sneaking into the research facility before springing the trap. If they'd captured all three of them, that would have been fine. But, the main target was Picard. Why the main target was Picard? Yeah. Picard knows stuff about theta band radiation. Okay. Theta radiation is something in Star Trek that has often been brought up as something that is hazardous to humanoid life. Okay. Well, it's also something that, if used in a carefully controlled manner, can also be used to transmit information via subspace. This is something that Picard is apparently a subject matter expert on. And he's one of 3 Starfleet captains who actually has enough knowledge to use such a device or create such a device. I guess anyone with an instruction manual can operate one. But yeah. Um, why exactly they need him? Yeah. See, the claim here is that the Cardassians are attempting to develop something called a metagenic weapon. They may or may not actually have anyone in the Cardassian Union who has enough knowledge of how to properly focus theta band energy to travel via subspace in controlled transmissions. So the fact that they're trying to kidnap a subject matter expert, maybe that's actually the entire point, is that they just they need a subject matter expert, so they're going to trick one into coming to them. Maybe. I'm genuinely not sure. See, the whole thing with metagenics is that it's basically a kill plague. It's like it's something that you dump on a planet, it kills off everything that it touches, and then it disintegrates. So that it might be a lifeless rock now, but it's a lifeless rock that doesn't have your enemies on it. And the idea here, though, is that the idea is using theta band carrier waves to somehow disperse that through subspace. Because, like, you carefully beam a theta band carrier wave towards a planet, you can direct the metagenic weapon to travel through subspace to the planet. Then, when it gets to the planet, it impacts the planet and kills off all life on the planet as a sort of like a doomsday weapon where, it doesn't blow up the planet. No, 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 no. It just kills all the people. The idea is something that's adequately terrifying. And the mere idea that the Cardassians are trying to develop such a deadly method of killing their enemies is something that Picard is, rightfully interested in preventing. Thing is, the whole thing was a trap because the Cardassians don't actually know how to make a theta band device capable of doing that yet. And like I said earlier, it's like, oh, you want to find a theta band uh, focusing expert to help you with your project. Oh, I see. Anyway, though, as sci-fi concepts go, this particular one is pretty crazy and horrifically scary because it's the whole idea of like, oh, we're going to sterilize your planet from outside your solar system. That is a horrifying idea. And you know what? You want a big bad in your campaign? That's a way to make a big bad someone your party has a reason to want to hunt down and take out. And with that, yeah, here's the thing. In the episode as aired, the big deal with this whole thing is that the Cardassians didn't know how to make it work. They were trying to figure it out. And Picard didn't know how close they were to figuring it out. And that's the reason why Admiral Lecheyev had Picard go looking for it, is because you need a subject matter expert to look through the stuff in that Cardassian science lab to figure out if the Cardassians actually have something that works. Because making a theta band emitter, okay, sure. You need an expert to be able to figure out whether the theta band emitter actually works. At least for this purpose. I mean, a theta band emitter that is capable of killing everyone within 20 kilometers of it. That's different than one that's transmitting things through subspace to kill everything somewhere else. And I think that's enough for this one. I'm going to get to part 2 later, and yeah, there's so much stuff in this crammed into this that it needs 2 parts. And I'm not even going into all the nuts and bolts of the actual episode. Like, I glossed over most of the stuff they had with Jellicoe and why he's such an interesting character. But you, in your story, if you're not writing Jellicoe, make up your own quirks for the person that you're writing. Jellicoe was a very interesting guy because he wasn't a bad guy. He was a good guy who was just, doing things his own way and not Picard's way. And with that, I would say, see you later.